Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel and a brand new video, the second installment of the Building Čakov series. We recently increased the size of the build team and have made plenty of progress since the last video. Both me and Rusty think you'll love the additions that have been made to the project and the progress we've made. So, without further ado, enjoy the video. A lot of research went into planning out and understanding the houses and Burgage plots for Čakov. Using mapping and measurement techniques, we were able to accurately translate the real-life scale into Minecraft, similar to the process we used for the church. We used Google Maps for current-day references for size, as well as the map from 1826, courtesy of the Czech Surveying Office archives. This allowed us to create a more accurate representation as to the scale of the Burgage plots and houses. This also gave us an idea as to how the buildings were laid out within each plot. While this was from the 19th century, it's safe to assume that the house placement is quite similar to that of the 15th century. This was then brought to life with illustrations made by Rusty, which helped showcase various details that we would later recreate and build in game. Next up, we've got something special, so both me and Rusty would love to walk you all through the build itself, so you can see in person the level of detail and accuracy we have achieved so far within the Čakov project. Hope you guys enjoy. Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 2 of Building Čakov. Now, the reception of the first episode of this build series was amazing. You guys loved the church episode and we're so glad that you guys liked it so much. A lot of effort went into making sure that church was as realistic and as good looking as possible within the mod, and we are very thankful for your support and kind of widespread sharing and discussion surrounding the project. So today we're basically going to focus on the next kind of segment of building that we did in the past month or so, and that was to basically create 3 kind of housing plots for the village. So it's kind of giving the village its initial atmosphere, starting to build up upon and add to the church, which obviously makes up the center of the settlement. So to help me kind of elaborate and show you guys the progress we've made, I've brought Rusty onto the episode. Feel free to introduce yourself, Rusty.
Hello, I'm Rusty. I've been doing the project together with HFranz for the last time, and yeah, I'm gonna go on with answer some stuff if HFranz needs details.
Exactly. So basically what I'm going to do is we're going to walk through each plot, we're going to show you guys all the details that we can, and if there's anything I think needs elaboration and kind of a bit of extra knowledge added to it and whatnot, I'll bring Rusty in, and Rusty is going to give you guys lots of details about different aspects of the project. So without further ado, let's get into it. So at the foremost, we have this massive cart here. Now I know we were going to jump into the housing plots, but I just want to talk about this cart because I think we both quite enjoyed making this. So I guess that's kind of an important detail surrounding the project really in terms of the setting. So Rusty, what kind of setting are we aiming for here? Like what kind of season?
So we're going for the late summer, early harvest season. Like, they just brought the hay into the village, and that is what this card is all about. It's just arrived at the village prior to loading the hay into the barns. So when we're getting to the barns later, you're gonna realize that there's not much hay in there yet. So it's just making its way into the village.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the initial harvesting season and such. We really wanted to give a sense of kind of detail, depth, and life to the project. So this is one of many details which help kind of achieve that goal. So as you can kind of see, we have lots of details that are reminiscent of a medieval Bohemian town, such as the entrance to the plot here having this kind of roofed arch area, and obviously the signature kind of Bohemian style buildings. So I guess we'll start with this main building here. So this is obviously the main house of the plot. So Rusty, would you like to kind of give us a little walkthrough of this interior?
Sure. These houses, in Bohemia at least, always worked by the same pattern, which always consisted of 3 basic rooms. The middle one was the entrance room. There was always the door on the long side of the house, leading to this room, which in the very most cases contained the kitchen, which usually was an open fireplace. In this special case, we have so much roof space that we added an alcove with extra sleeping spaces for servants and members of the household here. Yeah, the second room is the most important room for the houses. it's the living room. This is in most cases the only heated room in the house, and during 14th 15th century 15th century in Bohemia there was usually no indirect firing, so there was an open fireplace in this room, and the smoke of this fireplace just went right into the room, gathering below the ceiling and being let out by some windows placed high up in the walls. So this is why we have this kind of awkward window here, consisting of 5 separate windows. That was the purpose for that. The living rooms were kind of furnished in an easy way. The people living in these houses were not the poorest, but also they wouldn't afford much furniture. Some benches and a table were always there, but the rest is kind of kept simple. And one nice detail also, for the fact that there's smoke gathering at the top of the rooms. There we have references from Austria where this technique was used until the 18th century, and they used the smoke at the ceiling for smoking meat and sausages and stuff like that. So we kind of included this detail here as well. Then at the back of the house we always have a room that is not heated, that's usually a bit raised below, because in most cases there's a cellar below. In this case there isn't, but it's still a bit raised, and this is usually used for sleeping and some basic storage and some handcrafting.
So Rusty, would you like to kind of show everyone this next house here, the smaller one?
Yeah. Well, the other house was the house for the farmer and his family, the main living. This house is a house built for the older generation that gave up on the farming, that gave the farm to the next generation, to usually the oldest son, and they moved to a specially built smaller house, and this is a simpler building, and like I've explained in the other house that the usual plan has 3 rooms, and that was kind of the standard of 14th 15th century Bohemia. But there were some simpler houses that only had 2 rooms, or sometimes even just 1 room. But the 2 rooms were kind of the lower standard. In this case, there's no sleeping room in the back. There's just the kitchen and the sleeping. Those were sleeping on benches here. But the living room with the heating and the smoke gathering below the ceiling and all the details is still the same, just in a slightly simpler fashion.
Just a side note as well, obviously you'll see lots of piles of firewood everywhere. Firewood being a staple resource and something that a lot of people would have stocked up a lot on during the seasons, because obviously it's a main source of heating and cooking and such. As we kind of go into the rest of the plot here, we start to see a lot more kind of natural and also man-made details that really give a lot of life to each of these plots. So this first one here would be kind of like a flower or herb garden. Now we like to kind of put these gardens in lots of different spaces where they kind of make sense in terms of lighting and location, because they really add a sense of life, detail and atmosphere to each of the plots, and we can also add a lot of variation with this as well. So as you can see here, this one's got lots of flowers and herbs. We also have a very simple granary here as well, which has some kind of simple foodstuffs in there. We also have this shed here. Again, it's just a simple shed, so we have kind of baskets, wicker baskets and such. Again, all of these interiors have been done, no matter how detailed or simple they are. We always wanted to make sure interiors are finished. That's the same for beamwork as well. This is another example of where we have kind of some root vegetables in a kind of garden here. We also have a dovecote as well. So it's kind of like a staple detail that you always see in lots of Bohemian style illustrations and such. We also have a heaping pile of poop here. So here we have kind of one of the biggest parts of this plot, and that is the barn. Now these barns are really fun to build, at least I think so. I think they're really they're very similar but can be very unique at the same time in terms of the materials you use and the shape as well. So Rusty, would you kind of like to show everyone kind of beamwork inside here and kind of the thought process behind the barn interior?
Yeah, those barns in most cases work by the same way, which is having central pillars going right to the ridgeline of the roof. There's simpler and more elaborate ways of building barns, like the simple way is this with a one pillar row in the middle. There's an elaborate way with 2 rows. Yeah, we always included a second floor to this, in most cases the south side, which is for storing more hay. But yeah, the structure is very basic timber structure.
Rusty, would you like to kind of explain the kind of back area here, like what's going on?
So yeah, now we've reached the back area behind the barns, which is in most cases at least half, even if not more than half of the plot. And this is really important for the supplying the family and the farm, because they obviously would have fields around the village, but they wouldn't grow vegetables in the fields. It's all just grain. So the vegetable supply has to come from their plot. So they would have extensive vegetable gardens. This is the most important part, growing all kinds of vegetable to supply the kitchen and have a variety in the diet. What also comes to that is having fruit trees. In most cases we have apple trees, pear trees, plum trees. Those would be of course used when they're ripe, but also stored for the winter to have some vitamins during the winter. And yeah, we have some larger trees on the back part of these plots. Yeah, the separation between these plots is rather flimsy. Like there's only wicker fences in the most cases between the plots. But this is fine. The animals are all, if they're animals, they're all kept in special yards. So there's not a real reason to have a big separating wall between these.
So again, we kind of have a very small house here, which is another example of, I think this is another elder house, isn't it? This one here.
Yes.
So again, this one I think is even smaller, isn't it? Because, or is that other room part of it? It's just not connected on the interior.
Yeah, this one consists of even just one room. In this case, they would even sleep on the benches in the living room, which is fine because this room is heated. But of course, it's much less elaborate living than in the main house.
Obviously, we have kind of an overhang here to protect the firewood, such. Oh yeah, this is part of the. Is this part? Where's this part of? Oh yeah, it's part of the pigsty, isn't it? So we kind of have like a small storage shed. Sorry. Yeah, which has some thatch in. We also have a kind of some thatch here, which leads out into the kind of pigsty area here. Now this is one of a couple examples of where we kind of brought farm animals into the plots, which is something they would have done to kind of keep them within their fenced off area, as Rusty mentioned earlier. So yeah,
they're just as dirty as they should be in here.
Yeah, exactly. It's very muddy, lots of flies. I did not hold back with the flies here. Oh yeah, this is actually a really cool feature. Do you want to kind of explain the cellar to everyone?
Yeah, this is unlike the other plot. This house has a properly raised back part and therefore a cellar, which in this case is accessible from the outside. The cellar is another additional storage. It is relatively safe and dry in here, so they also store some more valuable goods in here. Yeah, awesome. And it has a really sturdy ceiling, so this is rather well protected from the influences of nature.
Awesome. So yeah, as you can see here, we have a really cool, another example of a kind of small garden here, which is obviously covered up by a birch tree as well, which we've kind of built. Another cool detail here is we have a different granary as well. So a lot of these plots, they will have granaries, but we like to make them look different and kind of realistic as well. So these are obviously feature kind of cool interiors. Very simple, but lots of food, locked chests and beamwork and such, and hanging racks as well, and details such as that. Again, we also have lots of kind of small kind of coverings and stuff for carts and tools, as well as sheds and such, and another barn as well. We also, in this kind of small corner here in the dark dingy part, we have a kind of an old car as well, some nettles growing in the dark, and obviously another pile of poo. We also have a cool kind of interior storage / sheep pen area, which is another example of a kind of animal pen. And there's a pig here as well, which is not meant to be here. These animals are a pain, by the way. I'll show you guys a quick look at the garden of this one. Again, it's very similar to the other one, although we do have some other fruit trees. So Rusty, do you want to kind of explain this other fruit tree here?
Yeah, in this case we have a few more plum trees, like this one and the next one's on the other plot. And in this case we also have some beehives, which are really simply made just by hollowing out tree stems and making a front hole so the bees can fly in and create their nests in there. Those are placed on other stems to keep them dry. They have some conical kind of roofs to prevent them from collecting water at the top and rotting away. But the details are really simple, and these beehives would have to be destroyed to harvest the honey in the end. So you do the whole thing once a year.
Awesome, yeah. So this is another example of a kind of realism that we want to achieve in terms of including things like beehives. Again, that's kind of a whole treasure trove of historical information and kind of details that we like to add to the project. So again, we have another kind of wagon here. This one's not as full as the other one, but again, it's just to kind of illustrate the kind of early harvest season. We have the interior. Now this is quite an interesting interior actually. Rusty, do you want to kind of show everyone this one, because it kind of has that interior cellar entrance?
Yeah, this one has a more condensed layout. Like, also this, first of all, this has more of a stone middle part. This house is a bit more fancy. It has a stone middle part and cellar. And in this case we managed to make the cellar accessible from the inside, not via stairs, but just with a slope. So the sleeping room is raised above, accessible via pretty steep stairs. But this will certainly stay dry and provide some nice sleeping space.
So could you explain these kind of window designs here? Obviously we've got the notches in the walls for the windows, but what are these rails here?
Those are sliding shutters, because when you're mostly relying on wooden details and carpentry, it's kind of hard to produce some hinges, which is a really tricky thing to do. But instead they mostly use sliding shutters, which could just be placed in roofs and be moved sideways, which is a much easier construction. In some cases it's even documented that they had two different shutters that could be slid in front of the window from two sides, with one being a wooden shutter and the other one being a wooden frame with an animal skin to let some light through, but not all of it. So you had the option which one to choose then. Yeah, this is another one of those living rooms. This one turned out really well. It has the whole wooden log ceiling construction in a kind of barrel vaulted shape. These details here made up with cloth hangers on the side. There's actually a documented house from the 15th century that has an ornament on that side carved out of a log that looks pretty similar to that, so I'm quite glad we managed to get that in here.
Again, here we have another granary. This one's interesting because it's kind of raised up on a stone foundation. Again, has very kind of similar interiors to the other granaries.
Mm-hmm. And this one is the only one in this bit of the village that has the log walls plastered from the outside. That was done for fire protection, so that it's harder to set the logs afire.
Awesome.
Which is not ultimately necessary because all the buildings are detached from each other.
Yeah.
But it still adds some more protection. Also, this plot is a slightly narrow one, so it didn't provide the space to have an elder house here.
So we wanted to add a kind of overhang here with some firewood. We've got a small herb garden here, as well as some cabbages.
One more quick note on the firewood. Some people may wonder why we place so many storage spaces for firewood, but you have to remember that until essentially the 19th century, it was very hard to set up a fire. You had to basically rely on flint and steel, so you wouldn't want to do that often. So what was your option? In most cases it was keeping the fire running, like all the time. So, and to do that you needed lots of firewood.
One thing I was going to note is that since obviously in the first episode, on the church episode, we mentioned how the project was just going to be me and Rusty. Now, we actually opened up a little bit and invited a few individuals onto the project to help. So those individuals include Butterman and Razordawn, who came on and helped basically help us blitz through these plots and kind of get the details done. So again, this interior barn here, this is the first barn interior we did, is packed full of details. We've got hanging ropes, spare wheels, even got thatch kind of draping off the side of the top floor here, which looks really cool.
As it was mentioned at the beginning of the video, it's right before the next harvest, so the barn is almost empty. This is basically the remaining hay of the last year. The bits that are still there that no one wanted to use because they were moldy at the bottom or something. It would probably be cleaned out before the new harvest comes in.
Got a big garden here full of root vegetables and such. Got an overhang here, a cool overhang, which is kind of unique to this plot actually. We haven't really done something like this for the other ones, because it kind of also features kind of a back tool storage shed as well. Again, this kind of plot has, I think this is another plum tree, isn't it? And we've got a bunch of apple trees as well. We used to have a lot of apple trees here, but we kind of wanted to take some out in favor of having a couple plum trees and a bit more open air, purely so that we could add another garden here. So yeah. We got lots of plans for the next few episodes, and we cannot wait to show you guys the progress we make. Anyway, I hope you guys all really enjoyed this update video. Me and Rusty loved recording it for you guys and kind of showing you all the progress we've made. And we hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Anyways, that brings us to the end of this video. Both me and Rusty hope you enjoyed this installment, especially the walkthrough of the build, which we really enjoyed doing and will probably do in the future. Make sure to subscribe and check out all of my social media links in the description down below, especially my Discord server, which you should totally join. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.